Question 1. During a sprint retrospective, the developers complain that the product owner is frequently adding new unplanned work to the sprint backlog after the sprint has started. This is causing them to regularly miss the sprint goal. What is the most appropriate action for the Scrum Master? A. Tell the product owner to stop this behavior as it is against Scrum rules. B. Coach the product owner on the impact of this behavior and facilitate a conversation between the product owner and the developers to find a better way to handle emergent work. C. Instruct the developers to create a separate backlog for these new requests and address them in the next sprint. D. Ask the stakeholders to intervene and control the product owner's requests. Answer B. Coach the product owner on the impact of this behavior and facilitate a conversation between the product owner and the developers to find a better way to handle emergent work. The most effective action is to coach the product owner and facilitate a discussion, which respects the self-management of the Scrum team and addresses the root cause of the conflict. A Scrum Master serves as a coach and facilitator, helping the team improve its processes and interactions rather than issuing commands or unilaterally changing the process. This approach upholds the Scrum values of openness and respect by allowing the parties involved to collaboratively find a solution that works for them, strengthening their working relationship. Remember, a great Scrum Master empowers the team to solve their own problems rather than solving the problems for them. Question 2. A Scrum team has been working together for several sprints. The developers have found a rhythm and are consistently delivering a valuable increment. A senior manager suggests that to increase efficiency, the testing activities should be handled by a separate, specialized QA team. What should the Scrum Master do? A. Agree to the change as it is a management directive aimed at improving efficiency. B. Facilitate a meeting between the manager and the developers to explain why a cross-functional team is essential in Scrum. C. Immediately reject the suggestion because Scrum requires all skills to be on one team. D. Propose a trial period where the teams work separately to gather data on the efficiency impact. Answer. B. Facilitate a meeting between the manager and the developers to explain why a cross-functional team is essential in Scrum. The best response is to coach the manager on a core Scrum principle, explaining the benefits of having a single cross-functional team responsible for delivering a done increment. Scrum relies on a cohesive team that possesses all the necessary skills to create value without depending on outside groups, which can create delays, handoffs, and a lack of shared ownership. By facilitating a conversation, the Scrum Master educates the organization and supports the team's structure, addressing the manager's concern for efficiency while preserving the integrity of the framework. A key takeaway is that a Scrum Master's role often involves coaching the wider organization, not just the Scrum team. Question 3. 3 Scrum teams are working on the same product. They all draw work from the same product backlog. How should the work of creating a single integrated increment be managed? A. The 3 Scrum Masters must meet daily to coordinate and integrate the work of their teams. B. A chief product owner should be assigned to manage the dependencies and integration points. C. The developers from all Scrum teams are collectively responsible for creating the integrated increment. D. An integration team should be formed to combine the work of the 3 Scrum teams at the end of the sprint. Answer. C. The developers from all Scrum teams are collectively responsible for creating the integrated increment. When multiple Scrum teams work on a single product, the developers on all teams share the accountability for creating a valuable, useful, and integrated increment each sprint. While they may need to coordinate frequently, the responsibility lies with the people doing the work, the developers themselves, not with an external integration team or a management layer. This approach fosters self-management, direct communication, and collective ownership, which are essential for effectively scaling Scrum. Think of it this way. If multiple chefs are contributing to one banquet, they must all work together to ensure the final meal is cohesive, rather than having a separate meal integrator. Question 4. During the daily Scrum, a developer mentions they are blocked by a technical issue they cannot solve. What is the primary purpose of sharing this information in this event? A. To receive a solution from the Scrum Master immediately. B. To formally report the status of the impediment to the product owner. C. To make the team aware of a threat to the sprint goal so they can plan how to address it. D. To update the project manager on the delay. Answer: C. To make the team aware of a threat to the sprint goal so they can plan how to address it. The daily Scrum's main purpose is for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt their plan for the next 24 hours. Announcing an impediment makes the entire team aware of a problem that could prevent them from achieving their goal, enabling them to self-manage and collaborate on a solution. While the Scrum Master may need to help remove the impediment if it's beyond the team's control, the initial and most important function of raising it in the daily Scrum is for team-level transparency and replanning. Always remember, the daily Scrum is a planning event for the developers by the developers, not a status meeting for anyone else. Question 5. The product owner is consistently unavailable to answer the developers' questions during the sprint. This is causing delays and forcing the developers to make assumptions about product backlog items. What is the most likely consequence? A. The Scrum Master will need to act as a proxy for the product owner. B. The sprint will be cancelled by the Scrum Master. C. The value of the increment delivered at the end of the sprint will be reduced. D. The developers will learn to be more self-sufficient and make better decisions. Answer: C. The value of the increment delivered at the end of the sprint will be reduced. The most direct and certain consequence of an unavailable product owner is a decrease in the value of the delivered increment. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product, and their guidance is crucial for clarifying requirements and making trade-offs. Without this input, the developers may build the wrong thing or a less valuable version of the right thing, ultimately failing to meet stakeholder needs effectively. This scenario highlights the importance of the product owner's active engagement with the developers. Always think about the flow of value. If the person responsible for defining value is absent, the team's effort is more likely to be misdirected. Question 6. What is the relationship between the sprint goal and the sprint backlog? A. The sprint goal is a summary of all the items selected for the sprint backlog. B. The sprint backlog is the detailed plan for how the developers will achieve the sprint goal. C. The sprint goal is optional if the sprint backlog is well defined and clearly understood. D. The sprint goal is created by the product owner, while the sprint backlog is created by the developers. Answer: B. The sprint backlog is the detailed plan for how the developers will achieve the sprint goal. The sprint goal provides the why for the sprint, giving the developers a cohesive objective and the flexibility to adapt their plan. The sprint backlog, composed of selected product backlog items and the plan to deliver them, represents the how. The developers create the sprint backlog as their emergent plan for accomplishing the sprint goal. For example, if the sprint goal is to implement a basic shopping cart checkout process, the sprint backlog would contain the specific technical tasks and items needed to build that functionality. The key insight is that the sprint goal provides focus and purpose, guiding the creation and adaptation of the sprint backlog throughout the sprint. Question 7. A Scrum team has a definition of done that requires every product backlog item to have comprehensive automated tests. However, the team lacks the skills and tools to create these tests. What is the Scrum Master's best course of action? A. Remove the automated testing requirement from the definition of done to match the team's current capabilities. B. Ask management to provide the necessary training and tools for the team. C. Assign a senior developer from another team to write the tests for them. D. Cancel the sprint until the team is properly equipped. Answer: B. Ask management to provide the necessary training and tools for the team. The Scrum Master's role includes removing impediments to the Scrum team's progress, and a lack of necessary skills or tools is a significant impediment. Rather than lowering the standard of quality by weakening the definition of done, the Scrum Master should work to elevate the team's capabilities. This involves coaching the organization, including management, on what the team needs to succeed and become more effective. This action supports the team's growth and helps the organization understand its role in enabling agile teams. A good takeaway is that the definition of done should be an aspirational quality standard, and the Scrum Master should help the team and organization rise to meet it. Question 8. A product owner wants to use velocity to promise a specific set of features to stakeholders for a release 3 sprints from now. What should the Scrum Master advise? This is a good use of velocity as it is a reliable metric for long-term planning and making commitments. B. Coach the product owner that velocity is a historical measure for the developer's forecasting and is not a commitment or guarantee of future delivery. C. Use the velocity data to create a formal project plan with milestones and deadlines for the stakeholders. D. Tell the product owner to double the velocity forecast to create a buffer and ensure the deadline is met. Answer B. Coach the product owner that velocity is a historical measure for the developer's forecasting and is not a commitment or guarantee of future delivery. This action correctly frames velocity as a tool for forecasting, not a contractual commitment. Velocity is based on past performance and is inherently variable due to the complexities of software development. Using it to make firm promises can create unrealistic expectations and pressure the team to compromise quality. The Scrum Master should coach the product owner on empiricism, suggesting the use of probabilistic forecasting, e.g., we have an 80% chance of delivering these features, rather than deterministic promises which aligns better with the uncertainty of complex work. The key is to remember that in Scrum, forecasts help with planning, but only a done increment provides certainty about what has been delivered. Question 9. In the middle of a sprint, the developers realize they have overestimated their capacity and will not be able to complete all the items in the sprint backlog. What should they do? A. Work overtime and weekends to ensure everything in the sprint backlog is completed. B. Immediately inform the product owner and collaborate to adjust the work, ensuring the sprint goal can still be met. C. Remove the lowest priority items from the sprint backlog without consulting the product owner. D. Wait until the sprint review to report that not all items were completed. Answer B. Immediately inform the product owner and collaborate to adjust the work, ensuring the sprint goal can still be met. The correct action is to promote transparency and collaboration as soon as the problem is identified. The sprint goal is the commitment, not the completion of every single item in the sprint backlog. By immediately collaborating with the product owner, the developers can inspect the situation and adapt the sprint backlog by renegotiating the scope. This allows them to focus their efforts on the most valuable work required to achieve the sprint goal. This approach embodies the Scrum values of openness, courage, and focus, and it prevents surprises at the sprint review. A helpful tip: problems don't get better with age. Transparency early and often is crucial in Scrum. Question 10. The Scrum Guide states that the Scrum Master is a true leader who serves. Which of the following actions best exemplifies this principle? A. Creating the sprint backlog on behalf of the developers to save them time. B. Facilitating a workshop to help the Scrum team resolve a persistent conflict. C. Making decisions for the team when they are unable to reach a consensus. D. Tracking each developer's hours to ensure everyone is working at full capacity. Answer B. Facilitating a workshop to help the Scrum team resolve a persistent conflict. A true servant leader empowers others rather than controlling them. Facilitating a resolution workshop is a perfect example because the Scrum Master is serving the team's needs by providing a process and a safe environment for them to solve their own problem. This builds the team's capability for self-management and conflict resolution. In contrast, making decisions for the team or performing their tasks undermines their autonomy and accountability. Servant leadership is about coaching, facilitating, and removing impediments so the team can become more effective and self-sufficient. Question 11. Which of the following is a valid reason for the product owner to cancel a sprint? A. The developers are not on track to complete all items in the sprint backlog. B. A key stakeholder is unhappy with the progress being made. C. The sprint goal has become obsolete due to a major shift in the market. D. The Scrum Master determines that the team is not working effectively. Answer: C. The sprint goal has become obsolete due to a major shift in the market. Only the product owner has the authority to cancel a sprint, and this is a rare and disruptive event. It should only be done when the sprint goal becomes obsolete, meaning the work is no longer valuable or relevant. For example, if a competitor launches a new product that makes the current sprint's objective pointless, continuing the sprint would be a waste of effort. A failure to complete all items or stakeholder dissatisfaction are issues to be addressed through inspection and adaptation in events like the daily scrum or sprint review, not by canceling the sprint. Remember, canceling a sprint is a last resort used only when the fundamental purpose of the sprint is gone. Question 12. What does it mean for a Scrum team to be self-managing? A. The team can decide which technologies and tools to use without any external input. B. The team internally decides who does what, when, and how to accomplish the work needed to achieve the sprint goal. C. The team members do not need a manager and report directly to the CEO. D. The team can change the sprint length or the timing of Scrum events whenever they want. Answer: B. The team internally decides who does what, when, and how to accomplish the work needed to achieve the sprint goal. Self-management in Scrum specifically refers to the team's autonomy over its own work process within the sprint. Once the sprint goal is set, the developers have the authority to determine the best way to accomplish it, including task allocation and technical approach. This empowerment is crucial for fostering ownership, creativity, and accountability. It doesn't mean they operate in a vacuum without organizational constraints or that they can unilaterally change the Scrum framework's rules, but it gives them control over their plan to deliver value. A simple way to think about it is that management defines the what and why through the product owner, while the self-managing team defines the how. Question 13. During a sprint planning meeting, the product owner proposes a sprint goal, and the developers select a set of product backlog items they believe will achieve it. What is the final and most crucial element needed to complete the sprint backlog? A. Approval from the stakeholders. B. A detailed plan of the tasks required to deliver the selected items. C. A risk assessment signed off by the Scrum Master. D. A list of all potential impediments. Answer: B. A detailed plan of the tasks required to deliver the selected items. The sprint backlog consists of two key parts: the what, the product backlog items selected for the sprint, and the how, a plan for delivering them. This plan is created by the developers and represents their best understanding of the work needed to create a done increment that meets the sprint goal. This plan is not static. It is emergent and can be updated throughout the sprint as the developers learn more. Without this initial plan, the sprint backlog is incomplete, as it lacks the actionable detail for the developers to start their work. Think of the sprint backlog as the team's recipe for the sprint. It needs both the list of ingredients, the items, and the instructions, the plan. Question 14. An organization is transitioning to Scrum. A manager responsible for resource allocation is concerned about not having enough work for a database specialist on a cross-functional Scrum team. The manager suggests the specialist should split their time between 3 Scrum teams. Why is this a potential problem? It violates the Scrum rule that team members must be 100% dedicated. B. It can create conflicting priorities and context switching, reducing the specialist's effectiveness and creating dependencies for the teams. C. The specialist's salary will be difficult to allocate across 3 different project budgets. D. Scrum teams should not have specialists. All members must be generalists. Answer: B. It can create conflicting priorities and context switching, reducing the specialist's effectiveness and creating dependencies for the teams. This approach creates significant issues related to focus and dependencies, which are counterproductive in an agile environment. When a specialist is shared, they become a bottleneck as teams must wait for their availability, leading to delays. The constant context switching between different teams' work reduces the specialist's efficiency and focus. A core goal of Scrum is to create stable, dedicated teams that can focus on a single sprint goal, and sharing members works directly against this principle. While Scrum doesn't forbid shared members, it's an impediment that a Scrum Master should help the organization address by encouraging the development of cross-functional skills within teams. Question 15. The sprint review is underway and the stakeholders are present. What is the primary focus of this event? A. To demonstrate the increment and for the Scrum team to get status updates from the stakeholders. B. To inspect the outcome of the sprint and determine future adaptations for the product backlog. C. To gain formal sign-off on the increment from the stakeholders. D. To review and critique the performance of the developers during the sprint. Answer: B. To inspect the outcome of the sprint and determine future adaptations for the product backlog. The core purpose of the sprint review is to inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog based on feedback and collaboration between the Scrum team and stakeholders. It is a working session, not a passive demonstration or a sign-off meeting. The feedback gathered during this event directly influences what becomes most valuable to work on next, making it a critical part of the empirical process of inspection and adaptation. The key is to see the sprint review as a forward-looking planning event for the product, fueled by the tangible results of the sprint. Question 16. What is the main accountability of the product owner regarding the product backlog? A. To ensure the product backlog is complete before the first sprint begins. B. To write all of the product backlog items themselves. C. To ensure the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. D. To get approval from a committee for every item added to the product backlog. Answer: C. To ensure the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. The product owner is accountable for effective product backlog management, which includes ensuring its transparency. A transparent product backlog is one that is accessible to all stakeholders and clearly communicates what the Scrum team will work on next. While the product owner might delegate the work of writing items, they remain accountable for the content, ordering, and clarity of the backlog. This transparency is fundamental to empiricism, as it allows for effective inspection and adaptation by everyone involved. The takeaway is that the product owner's job isn't just to have a list, but to maintain a clear, well-ordered, and visible list that guides the team toward delivering maximum value. Question 17. The 5 Scrum values are commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. A developer hesitates to share a significant problem they've discovered because they fear being blamed. Which Scrum value is most clearly being undermined in this situation? Focus. B. Commitment. B. Courage. D. Respect. Answer: courage. The value of courage is about having the professional strength to work on tough problems and to be transparent about progress and impediments. The developer's fear indicates a lack of psychological safety, preventing them from having the courage to speak up about a serious issue. A team that embodies courage is not afraid to say no, to ask for help, to try new things, or to share bad news. The Scrum Master's role is to foster an environment where such courage is safe and encouraged, as hiding problems is far more damaging than revealing them. Question 18. What is the time box for the sprint retrospective for a 1-month sprint? A maximum of 3 hours. B. A maximum of 4 hours. C. A minimum of 3 hours. D. It is not time-boxed. Answer: A. A maximum of 3 hours. For a 1-month sprint, the sprint retrospective is time-boxed to a maximum of 3 hours. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. This time box provides a container to ensure the event is focused and productive without consuming excessive time. The purpose of the time box is to prevent the event from dragging on indefinitely while still allowing enough time for the team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements to be enacted in the next sprint. Remembering the standard time boxes for events is crucial for the exam. A good tip is to link them to the 1-month sprint length. Sprint planning 8 hours, sprint review 4 hours, and sprint retrospective 3 hours. Question 19. If the definition of done for an increment is not met by the end of the sprint, what happens to the work? A. It is demonstrated in the sprint review to show the progress made. B. It is automatically moved to the next sprint's backlog. C. It is not released and is returned to the product backlog for future consideration. D. The sprint is considered a failure and must be extended until the work is done. Answer: C. It is not released and is returned to the product backlog for future consideration. In Scrum, only work that meets the definition of done can be considered part of the increment and be released. If an item is not done, it cannot be demonstrated as finished work and it returns to the product backlog. The product owner will then re-evaluate its priority relative to other items. This rule enforces quality and ensures transparency. Everyone knows that the increment is genuinely usable. It prevents the accumulation of technical debt and ensures that almost done is not mistaken for done. The key here is the strictness of done. It's a binary state and anything less than 100% complete goes back to the product backlog. Question 20. The developers on a Scrum team are complaining that the daily Scrum feels like a waste of time because they just report what they did to the Scrum Master. What is the most effective way a Scrum Master should address this? Stop attending the daily Scrum to empower the developers to run it themselves. B. Coach the developers on the true purpose of the daily Scrum as a planning event for them to synchronize their work towards the sprint goal. C. Make the meeting optional for developers who feel they don't need it. D. Create a standardized template for each developer to fill out before the meeting to make it faster. Answer B. Coach the developers on the true purpose of the daily Scrum as a planning event for them to synchronize their work towards the sprint goal. This situation indicates a misunderstanding of the daily Scrum's purpose, which the Scrum Master is responsible for correcting through teaching and coaching. The event is for the developers by the developers, to inspect their progress toward the sprint goal and adapt their plan for the day. It is not a status report for the Scrum Master or anyone else. By re-educating the team on its purpose, the Scrum Master helps them see its value and take ownership of it, turning it into the effective collaborative planning session it's meant to be. This is a classic example of a Scrum Master serving the team by ensuring the Scrum framework is understood and enacted correctly. Question 21. Which statement best describes the sprint goal? A. It is the list of all product backlog items that must be completed during the sprint. B. It is a single cohesive objective for the sprint that provides flexibility regarding the exact work needed to achieve it. C. It is a contractual commitment to the stakeholders that must be met at all costs. D. It is an optional element of Scrum, used only when the product backlog is not detailed enough. Answer B. It is a single cohesive objective for the sprint that provides flexibility regarding the exact work needed to achieve it. The sprint goal is a high-level objective that gives the team a unified purpose and direction for the sprint, rather than just a collection of unrelated tasks. It provides focus and encourages collaboration among the developers. Crucially, it also provides flexibility. If the team discovers that the initial plan, the sprint backlog, needs to change, they can adjust their work as long as they still aim to achieve the sprint goal. This is very different from simply completing a checklist of items. For example, a goal might be enhance search performance, which allows the team to find the best technical solution during the sprint. Question 22. A Scrum Master observes that the sprint retrospectives have become repetitive and are not generating meaningful improvements. What is the most constructive action for the Scrum Master to take? Ask the product owner to lead the next retrospective to bring a new perspective. B. Suggest that the team skip the retrospective for the next sprint to take a break. C. Introduce new facilitation techniques and formats to make the event more engaging and productive. D. Report to management that the team is not committed to continuous improvement. Answer C. Introduce new facilitation techniques and formats to make the event more engaging and productive. As the facilitator of the sprint retrospective, the Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring the event is positive and productive. If the current format is stale, it's the Scrum Master's duty to introduce new methods to stimulate discussion and help the team inspect itself effectively. This could involve using different exercises like sailboat, starfish, or 4LS. Liked, learned, lacked, longed for, to look at the sprint from different angles. This action serves the team by improving the effectiveness of a key Scrum event, directly contributing to the principle of continuous improvement. Remember, a good Scrum Master has a toolbox of facilitation techniques to keep the Scrum events fresh and valuable. Question 23. Who is accountable for creating the definition of done? A. The product owner, as they are accountable for the value of the product. B. The Scrum Master, as they are accountable for the process and quality. C. The entire Scrum team, including the product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. D. The developers, as they are the ones performing the work to create the increment. Answer D. The developers, as they are the ones performing the work to create the increment. According to the Scrum Guide, the developers are the ones who create the definition of done. If there is an organizational standard for done, the team's definition must include it as a minimum. The developers create the definition of done because they have the most intimate knowledge of the work required to turn a product backlog item into a releasable increment. This ownership ensures that the quality standard is realistic, understood, and adhered to by the people doing the work. The product owner and Scrum Master help ensure the definition of done creates a high-quality, valuable increment, but the creation and ownership rest with the developers. Question 24. A stakeholder continually approaches individual developers during the sprint with new ideas and requests, disrupting their focus. What is the most appropriate initial action for the Scrum Master? A. Instruct the developers to ignore the stakeholder. B. Ask the stakeholder to stop talking to the developers and direct all communication through the product owner. C. Add the stakeholder's requests directly to the sprint backlog to be helpful. D. Organize a meeting with the stakeholder and the product owner to discuss the new ideas and their potential impact on the product goal. Answer: B. Ask the stakeholder to stop talking to the developers and direct all communication through the product owner. The correct action is to guide the stakeholder to the appropriate communication channel, which is the product owner. The product owner is responsible for managing the product backlog and stakeholder expectations, ensuring that the developers can focus on the sprint goal without disruption. This approach protects the team's focus while respecting the stakeholders' input by channeling it through the correct process. This is a key function of the Scrum Master, acting as a buffer and coaching the organization on how to interact effectively with the Scrum team. A good tip is to think of the product owner as the single voice of the customer for the team, which simplifies communication and prioritization. Question 25. What is the primary reason for a Scrum Master to ensure that the Scrum events take place and are kept within their time boxes? A. To report adherence to the process to senior management. B. To ensure that every participant gets an equal amount of time to speak. C. To create a regular cadence for inspection and adaptation and to avoid waste. D. To ensure there is enough time to cover every item on the agenda in detail. Answer: C. To create a regular cadence for inspection and adaptation and to avoid waste. The time boxes for Scrum events are crucial because they create a predictable rhythm for the team to operate within, establishing a consistent opportunity for inspection and adaptation. This regular cadence is a cornerstone of empiricism. Furthermore, timeboxing prevents waste by ensuring that meetings are concise and focused on their specific purpose, respecting the participants' time. For instance, the daily Scrum's 15-minute timebox forces the developers to have a quick, focused planning session, not a long, drawn-out problem-solving or status meeting. The key is that time boxes are not just about ending on time, they are about creating the focus and regularity needed for agile development to thrive.